The sound of my father-in-law's laughter echoed through the crystal glasses as we toasted another successful year. The Torino family's annual Christmas party was in full swing. The ballroom of our Westchester estate filled with the careful balance of legitimate businessmen and the other kind. I watched Elena work the room like the maestro she was, touching an elbow here, sharing a whispered joke there, keeping the delicate ecosystem of our world in perfect harmony. "Your wife is a treasure, Vincent," Judge Morrison said, appearing at my elbow with his third whiskey of the night. "That donation she arranged for my daughter's school, magnificent." "Elena believes in investing in the community," I replied smoothly, though we both knew the donation was more about the favorable ruling he'd given us last month than any charitable impulse. 23 years we'd been married. I'd gone from an ambitious prosecutor who thought he could change the system from within to the Torino family's consigliere, the man who kept everyone out of prison and made problems disappear into legal loopholes. Taking Elena's name when we married had been strategic. It avoided any appearance of conflict with my law practice while binding me to the family in a way that mattered in our world. But somewhere between the strategy and the years, I'd fallen completely in love with her. "Vincenzo," Elena's voice floated across the room, using my full name the way she did when she wanted my attention. "Come here, Caro. The mayor wants to discuss the waterfront development." I excused myself and made my way through the crowd. Elena slipped her arm through mine as I approached, a united front as always. The mayor, a nervous man who owed his election to our fundraising efforts, started babbling about zoning permits. "It's handled," I assured him. "The Planning Commission will approve everything by February." "But the environmental groups—" "Will find their concerns addressed by a generous donation to wetland preservation elsewhere," Elena finished smoothly. "Everyone wins." That was Elena's gift, making everyone feel like they were winning even as we got exactly what we wanted. She'd learned it from her father, Tony Torino, who'd built this family from a small-time booking operation to one of New York's 5 pillars. The party continued until nearly 3 in the morning. I found myself on the terrace, smoking a cigar with Tony and his underboss, Sal Ricci. "You've done good, Vincent," Tony said, his voice gravelly from decades of cigars. "When you first came around, I thought you were just another ambitious lawyer looking to cash in. But you've proven yourself. You're family now. Really family." "I appreciate that, Tony. Elena's happy. That's what matters most." He looked through the French doors to where his daughter was saying goodbye to the last guests. "A happy wife makes a happy life, eh?" If only I'd known how prophetic those words would prove to be. The first sign something was wrong came 3 months later, in March. Elena had started having her book club meetings twice a week instead of once. She'd come home with a glow about her, chattering about whatever novel they'd discussed with more enthusiasm than I'd seen in years. "You really enjoyed the book that much?" I asked one Tuesday night as she practically floated into our bedroom. "Oh, it was fascinating," she said, already turning away to undress. "Marissa chose this Italian author. Very passionate writing." "What was it about?" There was the briefest pause before she answered. "Star-crossed lovers in Sicily. You wouldn't enjoy it. Too much romance, not enough legal precedent." She laughed at her own joke and disappeared into the bathroom. I heard the shower start and sat on the bed, a strange unease settling in my stomach. In 23 years of marriage, Elena had perfected the art of the guilt trip. Every late night at the office, every weekend spent on family business, every missed dinner. She had a comment, a sigh, a pointed look. But lately? Nothing. She'd been perfectly content with my absence. The second sign came a week later. I'd come home early from a deposition that had settled unexpectedly. Elena's Mercedes was in the driveway, but when I called out, no answer. I found her in the bedroom, hurriedly dressing. "Vincent, you scared me," she said, her laugh a little too bright. "I was just about to go out." "Where to?" I asked, noticing her hair was damp despite it being 3 in the afternoon. "Shopping with Marissa. You know how she is. If we're not at Nordstrom by 4, she acts like the world is ending." She kissed my cheek as she passed, and I caught a scent that wasn't her usual perfume. Something muskier, masculine almost. But before I could process it, she was gone, the click of her heels on marble fading down the hallway. That night, I did something I'd never done in our entire marriage. I checked her phone while she slept. It was a violation of trust, the kind of thing that would have appalled the idealistic young prosecutor I'd once been. But that man had died somewhere between his first fixed trial and his 100th mob funeral. What remained was someone who'd learned that in our world, paranoia was just another word for survival. Her regular texts were innocent enough: arrangements for charity events, lunch plans, reminders about picking up dry cleaning. But there was a messaging app I didn't recognize, hidden in a folder labeled Recipes. My hands were steady as I opened it, years of maintaining calm in court serving me well. The messages made my blood run cold and hot at the same time. "Can't wait to see you Tuesday. Usual place. Yesterday was incredible. I can still feel you. Wear the green dress next time. You looked beautiful in it." And Elena's responses, each one a dagger. "Tuesday perfect. I'll tell V I have book club." I can't stop thinking about yesterday either. "Anything for you, my love." My love. 2 words that destroyed 23 years. I carefully returned the phone to its place and went to my study. Poured 3 fingers of scotch. The good stuff, the 30-year-old Macallan that Tony had given me when Vincent Jr. was born. My hands shook slightly as I raised the glass, the only outward sign of the earthquake happening inside me. Who was M? The smart thing would be to confront her immediately. But I'd learned long ago that in our world, information was power, and acting on incomplete information was how you ended up dead or in federal prison. I needed to know more. The next morning, I made calls. Not to family people. Couldn't risk word getting back to Tony. I reached out to a contact in Chicago, someone who owed me favors from a federal case I'd made disappear. "I need a private investigator," I told him. "Someone with no connections to New York families. Complete discretion." "This about a case?" "Personal matter." There was silence on the other end. In our world, personal matters that required outside investigators usually meant one thing. "I know a guy. Former FBI, does private work now. Expensive but thorough. And most importantly, quiet." The investigator, a man named Campbell with the bland face of someone you'd forget 5 minutes after meeting, arrived in New York 3 days later. We met at a diner in Newark, away from any possible family eyes. "I need complete surveillance on my wife," I said, sliding Elena's photo across the table. Even in the harsh fluorescent light, she was beautiful. Elegant cheekbones, dark eyes that could be warm or cutting depending on her mood. The kind of timeless beauty that made men stupid. Campbell studied the photo with professional detachment. "How long has the affair been going on?" "What makes you think?" "Mr. Torino, I've been doing this for 20 years. A man like you doesn't hire someone like me unless he already knows something's wrong. You just need the details." I appreciated his directness. "At least a few weeks. Maybe longer. I need to know who, where, when. Everything." "Time frame?" "As fast as possible, but thorough over fast." "It'll cost." "Money's not an issue." I slid an envelope across the table. "There's 25,000. Another 25 when you're done. 50,000 bonus if you're done within the week without anyone knowing you were watching." Campbell pocketed the envelope without counting it. A professional. "I'll be in touch." 3 days. That's all it took for my world to completely shatter. Campbell called from a burner phone. We need to meet. Same place. And Mr. Torino, bring cash. I'm done after this. The photos were worse than my imagination had prepared me for. Elena entering the Riverside Hotel at 2:15 p.m. Elena in a passionate embrace in what looked like a parking garage. Elena and her lover at a discreet restaurant in Connecticut, holding hands over wine. But it was the man's identity that made my blood turn to ice. Marco the Hammer Benedetti, the Carlosi family's top enforcer. You're sure? I asked, though the photos were clear enough. Positive. I ran facial recognition to be certain. Marco Benedetti, age 38. Been with the Carlosis since he was 16. Their top earner runs their protection rackets and enforcement. Word is he's being groomed to take over when Sal Carlosi steps down. I stared at a photo of them kissing. Elena's hands in his hair, lost in passion I hadn't seen on her face in years. With a Carlosi. Not just any Carlosi, their most dangerous killer. How long? My voice sounded strange, distant. Based on the patterns I've observed and some credit card tracking, at least 3 months. They meet Tuesdays and Thursdays, always at the Riverside Hotel. They've got a routine. She arrives first, he follows 15 minutes later. Room 412, registered under the name Michael Sterling. Does she know who he is? Campbell pulled out another set of photos, these from the restaurant. Look at this one. It was a close-up of their table. Elena was laughing at something Marco had said, and he was leaning in, whispering. The next photo showed her playfully hitting his arm, and I could read her lips clearly. Stop it. Someone might recognize the famous Marco Benedetti. So she knew. She knew exactly who he was, what he represented, and she didn't care. There's more, Campbell said reluctantly. Audio recordings from the restaurant. Their conversation was illuminating. He handed me a small device with earbuds. I listened to my wife giggle like a teenager as Marco described what he wanted to do to her. Listen to her call him my dangerous man and joke about how exciting it was to be with someone who made his living with his hands, though not the way Vincent does, pushing papers. I've seen enough, I said, pulling out the earbuds before I did something that would attract attention in the diner. There's one more thing, Campbell said. During my surveillance, I noticed something interesting. 3 months ago, right around when their affair started based on the patterns, there was an incident. A DEA agent I still have contacts with mentioned seeing someone matching Benedetti's description entering the FBI building downtown. Just a glimpse, could have been anyone, but what? But if Marco Benedetti is talking to the feds, and he's sleeping with your wife, that's a whole different kind of problem. I paid Campbell his money and sent him back to Chicago with instructions to forget everything. Then I sat in my car in that Newark parking lot for an hour, processing what I'd learned. Elena wasn't just cheating on me. She was cheating with the enemy, a man whose family had been at war with ours for generations. A killer who'd probably ordered hits on Torino associates. And possibly, just possibly, a federal informant. In my world, there were insults and there were declarations of war. This was both. I drove home carefully, observing every traffic law, my mind already working through possibilities. The emotional part of me, the part that still loved my wife, that remembered our wedding day and the birth of our children, wanted to scream, to rage, to destroy everything in sight. But the survivor in me, the careful lawyer who'd navigated the treacherous waters between organized crime and federal law for 2 decades, knew better. Emotion got you killed. Planning kept you alive. That night at dinner, I studied Elena with new eyes. She'd made my favorite, osso buco with risotto Milanese, the same meal she'd cooked for me on our first anniversary when we were still poor and pretending we weren't both terrified of the life we'd chosen. You're quiet tonight, she observed, pouring wine with steady hands. Long day. The Riverside development is hitting snags with the environmental impact study. You'll figure it out. You always do. She smiled, and I wondered how I'd missed the distance in it. When had her smile stopped reaching her eyes? How was book club? I asked casually, cutting into the tender veal. Wonderful. We're reading Elena Ferrante now, my brilliant friend. Have you heard of it? No. It's about friendship and betrayal in Naples. Very atmospheric. She took a sip of wine. You'd find it interesting, actually. The way the characters justify their choices, how they rationalize hurting the people closest to them. The irony was so thick, I could have carved it with my knife. Sounds fascinating. After dinner, we watched the news in companionable silence, then went to bed. Elena read while I pretended to review case files, hyper-aware of every movement she made. When she finally turned off her light and settled in, I waited until her breathing deepened before speaking into the darkness. Elena? I love you. There was a pause, just a heartbeat too long. I love you too, Vincent. But she didn't. Not anymore. Maybe not for a long time. The next 2 weeks were an exercise in performance art. I played the oblivious husband while carefully orchestrating what would come next. First, I needed leverage beyond just the affair. In our world, men had affairs all the time. It was almost expected. But women? Wives? That was different. Add in the fact that it was with a rival family's man, and it became a capital offense. I needed to control the narrative. I reached out to a contact in digital forensics, someone who'd helped me discredit a federal witness once. I need some photos doctored. Nothing that would hold up in court, but believable enough for a quick look. What kind of photos? Man entering federal buildings, meeting with known informants, that sort of thing. He didn't ask who or why. In our business, you learned not to ask questions. The photos he delivered were masterful. Marco Benedetti apparently entering the FBI building, Marco sitting with a known DEA informant at a coffee shop, Marco receiving what looked like a payoff envelope in a parking garage. Were they real? Of course not. But in our paranoid world, would anyone look too closely before acting? Doubtful. I also started documenting Elena's patterns obsessively. Every movement, every purchase, every phone call. I built a timeline that would paint a very specific picture when the time came. The devoted wife slowly corrupted by a dangerous man, too frightened to come forward, trapped by his threats. It was a lie, but it was a lie that would save her life while destroying everything else. The confrontation came on a Thursday. I'd told Elena I was flying to Chicago for a deposition on the Marchetti case. I'll be back Sunday, I said at breakfast, kissing her goodbye. Try not to redecorate the entire house while I'm gone. She laughed, already distracted, probably counting the hours until her afternoon plans. Be safe, Caro. Chicago can be dangerous. Not as dangerous as New York, I replied, and something in my tone made her look up. What do you mean? Nothing. Just that home is where the real dangers hide sometimes. I smiled to soften the words. I love you, Elena. Love you too, she said, but she was already turning away, mind elsewhere. Instead of the airport, I drove to a parking garage in Queens where I kept a car Elena didn't know about. A bland Toyota that would blend into any neighborhood. Changed into jeans and a baseball cap, the uniform of invisibility in New York. Then I waited. I'd stationed myself at a coffee shop across from the Riverside Hotel by 1:30. At 2:10, Elena's Mercedes pulled up to the valet. She was wearing the green dress I'd bought her for our 20th anniversary. The one that made her look like the goddess I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. The symbolism felt like a knife between my ribs. Marco arrived at 2:25 in his black Cadillac, not even trying to be subtle. 3 months had made them comfortable, sloppy. They thought they were untouchable. Her for being Tony Torino's daughter, him for being Sal Carlosi's rising star. They were about to learn otherwise. I waited exactly 30 minutes. Long enough for them to feel safe, not long enough to finish what they'd started. The hotel manager, who owed me for making a federal drug charge disappear from his son's record, had provided a master keycard and disabled the camera on the 4th floor. I was never here, I told him. Never saw you, Mr. Torino. The hallway was empty as I approached room 412. I could hear music inside, jazz, something sultry and cliche. For a moment, I stood with the keycard in my hand, knowing that once I opened this door, nothing would ever be the same. 23 years of marriage, 2 children, a life built together, all of it balanced on this moment. Then I remembered the photos. Her ecstasy in the arms of another man. How she called him my love. I opened the door. At first, they didn't hear me. Elena was lying on the bed with Marco. "Good afternoon," I said in a conversational tone. Marco's hand immediately reached for the nightstand, a reflex. "I wouldn't do that," I said, showing him my gun. I wasn't pointing it at anyone, just letting him feel its weight. "We'll talk like civilized people." Vincent. Elena's voice was high-pitched and panicked, not at all like the voice of a composed woman who ran charities and managed federal prosecutors. Quiet. The words sounded like a lash from a whip. "Your turn will come. Right now, Marco and I need to discuss some business." I understood what he could have attracted in a woman tired of lawyers and legitimate businessmen. "Torino," Marco said, trying to sound almost respectful, even though he was with my wife. "It's not what you think." I even laughed. "Really?" "Because I think I just caught you in bed with my wife. Unless you're going to tell me this is some kind of new therapy, I'm pretty sure it's exactly what I think it is." "Vincent, please let me explain," Elena tried again. "I said shut up." I didn't raise my voice, but she flinched as if I had shouted. "Every time you speak without permission, I add another year to your sentence. Is that clear?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face, clutching the sheet like armor. "So, Marco." I took out my phone and flipped to the fake photos. "Let's talk about your recent visits to the federal building." His face paled when I showed him the pictures. That's not true." "Of course they're not real. But tell me, Marco, when Sal Carlosi sees them, do you think he'll care about photo forensics? Especially after what happened to Moretti last year?" The Moretti family had been destroyed by a federal investigation led by an inside informant. Since then, all the families had been gripped by extreme paranoia. "You're setting me up." "I'm offering you a choice." I leaned back, keeping the gun in plain sight but not threatening. "You can call right now, confess something that will allow you to disappear, but won't make you a stooge. Or—" I flipped through a few more photos. "These photos will end up with Sal, along with some very interesting bank statements I forged showing payments from the Federal Witness Protection Fund. He'll kill me either way." "Probably. But one death involves just you. The other—" I shrugged. "Well, you know how thorough the Carloses are about cleaning up rat problems. Family members, girlfriends, anyone who might have known something." The threat was clear. Play along, and it's just him. Fight me, and I'd make sure the Carloses thought everyone he'd ever cared about was compromised. What exactly am I supposed to confess to? I pulled out a piece of paper, unfolded it slowly. "You've been skimming, got greedy, The Rome shipments, the dock union percentages. You've been taking a piece off the top. His eyes widened. Those were real operations, real money streams. And I knew from my sources that there had been some shortfalls lately. Unexplained losses that had Sal Carlosi looking for someone to blame. I'll be confessing to someone else's theft. You'll be confessing to something believable, something that makes you a thief, not a rat. Take the gift, Marco. He looked at Elena, and something passed between them that made me want to empty my gun into his chest. Regret goodbye, maybe even love. Then he picked up his phone. Speaker, I instructed. He dialed, and we all waited through the rings. Finally, Sal Carlosi's gruff voice answered. Yeah? Sal, it's Marco. I need to tell you something. You sound strange, Marco. Where are you? Marco's eyes stayed on my gun as he recited my script. I screwed up, Sal. I've been skimming. The Rome shipments, the dock percentages. I got greedy, got stupid. The silence on the other end was deafening. When Sal spoke again, his voice was deadly quiet. How much? 800,000, give or take. You're a dead man. I know. Marco's voice was steady now, accepting his fate. I'm leaving the city. You'll never see me again. Me. I just wanted to come clean before I went. Who else knows? Who are you running with? Marco hesitated, and I raised the gun slightly. Some lawyer's wife, he said finally. Civilian. She doesn't know anything about our thing. Just thinks I'm a real estate guy with money to burn. What's her name? Doesn't matter. You'll never find us. Another long silence. Then, Marco, you listen to me. You run, you hide, you disappear. But if I ever see you again, if you ever set foot in New York, if I even hear a whisper of your name, I know, Sal. I'm already gone. Your mother? Tell her I died in a car accident upstate. Closed casket. Let her mourn clean. The line went dead. Marco set down the phone with shaking hands. In 3 minutes, he'd gone from the Carlosi family's golden boy to a dead man walking. Now what? He asked. Now you get dressed and leave. There's a bag in the trunk of my car downstairs. Black Lexus, jersey plates, parked in the garage. 50,000 cash and a clean ID. Take it and go. That's it? That's it. You've got maybe 2 hours before they start looking. 3 before they're watching the airports and train stations. If you're smart, you'll drive straight through to Canada. Marco started pulling on his clothes, the dangerous confidence replaced by survival instinct. At the door, he paused, looked back at Elena. I'm sorry, he said quietly. For what it's worth, it was real. Go, I said before she could respond. And Marco, if I ever see you again, if you ever try to contact her, if you even think about coming back, Sal Carlosi will be the least of your problems. He left, and suddenly the room felt too small, too quiet. Elena and I stared at each other across a chasm that hadn't existed 3 months ago. Get dressed, I said finally. We're going home. Vincent, please? That's 1 year. Her mouth snapped shut. She gathered her clothes with shaking hands, dressing with her back to me like I hadn't seen every inch of her body 1,000 times before. When she was dressed, she stood by the door waiting. Sit, I instructed, gesturing to the bed. We're not done. She sat on the edge of the bed where she'd just been with another man, and I saw her process that this wasn't going to end with a simple fight and forgiveness. Do you know what you've done? I asked quietly. Do you have any conception of the position you've put us all in? I fell in love. That's 2 years. I held up 2 fingers. Want to try for 3? She pressed her lips together, tears flowing silently. You didn't fall in love, Elena. You got bored. 23 years of marriage, 2 kids, a life most people would kill for, literally kill for, and you got bored. So you decided to spice things up with what? The most dangerous choice possible? A Carlosi enforcer? I stood, paced to the window, looked out at the city below. Do you know how many people Marco Benedetti has killed? I do. 27 confirmed. That's 27 families destroyed. 27 mothers who'll never see their sons again. And you called him my love. You don't understand? That's 3 years. She made a sound like a wounded animal but stayed silent. I understand perfectly, I continued. You wanted excitement, danger, to feel young again, desired again. And you were willing to risk everything, our lives, our children's lives, the family's existence, for afternoon adventures in this tacky hotel room. I turned back to her. Tell me, when you were screaming his name, were you thinking about Vincent Jr.? About what would happen to him if the Carloses found out their enforcer was sleeping with a Torino? Were you thinking about Maria? About how she'd look with a Colombian necktie because her mother couldn't keep her legs closed? Stop, she whispered. That's 4 years, but I'll allow it because we're almost done. I moved closer. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to leave this hotel together. You're going to smile if anyone sees us. We're going to drive home in silence. And when we get there, you're going to do exactly what I tell you when I tell you, without question or complaint. Because from this moment on, you are not Elena Torino, society queen. You are not the woman who runs charity boards and hosts galas. You are a security risk who needs to be managed. Understood? She nodded. Say it. I understand. Good. Let's go. The walk through the hotel felt endless. Elena kept her head high, the practiced posture of a woman who'd been taught since birth that appearances mattered more than reality. But I could see the tremor in her hands, the way she gripped her purse like a lifeline. In the car, silence stretched between us like a living thing. I drove carefully, signaling every turn, complete stops at every sign. The last thing we needed was to get pulled over with Elena in her current state. Can I ask one question? She said as we turned onto the highway. No. You're at 4 years of silence. I'd stop talking if I were you. By the time we pulled into our driveway, 3 black SUVs were waiting. Tony Torino stepped out of the lead vehicle, his weathered face grave. My father-in-law had built this family from nothing, had survived wars with the other families, federal investigations, and changing times. But seeing his daughter's tear-stained face made him look every one of his 70 years. Vincent, he said simply, we need to talk. I know. Inside. The family's leadership had assembled in our living room like a tribunal. Tony's underboss, Sal Ricci, his consigliere, Pete Damiano, 2 capos I recognized as handling the most sensitive operations. Elena was directed to sit on the couch between 2 of Tony's most trusted soldiers, looking like a defendant awaiting sentencing. I laid out the situation with the clinical precision of a prosecutor presenting a case. The affair, documented with selected photos that showed the relationship without being gratuitously explicit. Marco's identity as a Carlosi enforcer. His confession and flight. She was compromised, I said, shifting into the narrative I'd prepared. Marco Benedetti targeted her deliberately, presented himself as a real estate developer named Michael Sterling. By the time she realized who he really was, she was in too deep. He threatened her, said the Carloses would kill us all if she tried to end it. It was a complete fabrication. The recordings made it clear Elena knew exactly who Marco was from the beginning. But this version kept her alive while still acknowledging the betrayal. Is this true? Tony asked his daughter directly. Elena looked at me and I saw the moment she understood. Admit the truth, that she knowingly slept with a Carlosi, and she'd be dead before sunrise. Play along with my fiction, and she might survive. I I didn't know at first, she said, voice small. He was charming, different from the usual men at our events. When I found out who he really was, I tried to end it, but he said he'd kill Vincent, hurt the children if I didn't keep seeing him. So you kept meeting him? Tony's voice was ice. I didn't know what else to do. I was terrified. It was a masterful performance because her fear, at least, was real. Just misdirected. She was afraid of me, not Marco. The family deliberated for an hour, while Elena and I waited in my study. She tried to speak several times, but I held up my hand for silence. The walls had ears in moments like this, and one wrong word could destroy the fiction I'd created to save her life. Finally, Tony returned with the verdict. Elena was compromised, a security risk. She would need to be protected from the Carloses who might want revenge, from potential federal investigation, from herself. We have a safe house on Long Island, Tony said, not looking at his daughter. She'll be comfortable there. Guards for her protection, limited outside contact until we know the threat has passed. I'll make the arrangements, I said. After all, she's still my wife. Her safety is my responsibility. Tony nodded approvingly. In our world, a man who protected his wife, even after betrayal, showed strength. One who abandoned her showed weakness. That night, as Elena packed under the watchful eyes of guards, she made one last attempt to reach me. Vincent, we need to talk about this. About us. We can get through this. Counseling, therapy, whatever you want. I made a terrible mistake, but our marriage... Our marriage? I kept my voice conversational as I watched her fold clothes into a suitcase. Our marriage ended the moment you decided to risk our children's lives for your excitement. Everything since then has been damage control. I never meant for it to go so far. No? When did you mean for it to stop? After the first lunch? The first kiss? The first time you let him inside you? I moved closer. Or were you never going to stop? Were you going to keep playing Russian roulette with our lives until someone ended up dead? I was lonely. The words exploded out of her. You're never here. Always working, always managing family business. When was the last time we went to dinner just the two of us? When was the last time you looked at me like I was more than just another asset in your portfolio? So your solution was Marco Benedetti? A killer? An enforcer for our enemies? He made me feel alive again. Wanted. Like a woman instead of just Mrs. Vincent Torino, the lawyer's wife, the boss's daughter. And now you're nobody's wife. Was it worth it? She sank onto the bed. I don't know. You don't know? I laughed, sharp and bitter. You threw away 23 years of marriage, endangered our children, betrayed your father, humiliated me in front of both families, and you don't know if it was worth it? When you put it like that, how else should I put it? Should I romanticize it? Say you were swept away by passion? That love conquers all? I shook my head. This isn't a romance novel, Elena. This is real life, where choices have consequences, and you chose poorly. The safe house was everything a prison should be when it doesn't look like one. A sprawling mansion on 5 acres of manicured grounds, ocean views from every window, a pool that sparkled in the morning sun. It was the kind of place Elena's friends would pay millions to vacation in. It was also a fortress. Guards at every entrance and exit, ostensibly for her protection. Cameras in every room except the bathrooms, for security. No phones, no internet, no contact with the outside world unless approved by me. This is temporary, I told her as I showed her around, playing the concerned husband for the guards. Just until we're sure Marco is really gone and the Carloses aren't planning revenge. How long? as long as it takes. I showed her the panic buttons in each room, the safe room in the basement, all the security features that were really containment measures. Then I handed her a credit card. This is linked to an account I'll fund monthly. Enough for groceries, clothes, books, whatever you need. All purchases will be reviewed. For security purposes, she finished bitterly. I'm a prisoner. You're alive, I corrected. Do you understand what would have happened if I hadn't controlled this narrative? If the family knew you willingly bedded a Carlosi, your father would have had to order your death himself. That's the law. The law, she spat. Your precious rules and codes. What about love? What about forgiveness? Love is why you're in this beautiful house instead of a shallow grave. Forgiveness? I shrugged. That's between you and God. I'm just managing earthly consequences. I pulled out a folder. I've taken the liberty of resigning your positions on the various charity boards. Too dangerous for public appearances right now. You can't do that. I built those relationships over years and destroyed them in 3 months. The hospital board was very understanding when I explained you were suffering from stress-related exhaustion and needed extended rest. This is kidnapping. This is protection. Ask anyone, your father, the family, they all agree you need to be kept safe. I headed for the door. I'll visit weekly to check on your needs. The guards have my number if there's an emergency. What about the children? I paused at the door. I'll tell them you're not feeling well, that you need quiet to recover. They're smart kids. They'll understand that sometimes mothers need space. You're going to turn them against me. No, Elena, I'm going to protect them from the truth. Would you prefer I tell them their mother endangered their lives for afternoon excitement? The first week was the hardest. I had to face our children, had to lie with conviction. Where's Mom? Vincent Jr. asked at dinner. 18, headed to Colombia in the fall, too smart not to notice the sudden change. She's not feeling well. The doctors think it's exhaustion. She's been pushing herself too hard with all the charity work. Is she in the hospital? Maria, 15, looked worried. A private facility where she can rest, like a spa, but with medical supervision. They accepted it, because what else could they do? In our world, people disappeared sometimes for various reasons. The fact that their mother was simply away rather than gone forever was actually reassuring. I maintained the routine: work, family dinners, weekend visits to Tony to keep him updated. Everyone praised how I was handling the situation, protecting Elena while maintaining family stability, the concerned husband doing right by his troubled wife. 2 weeks after Elena's confinement, I implemented the next phase. I sat across from Special Agent Patricia Chen in a federal building conference room, laying out my concerns with carefully crafted worry. My wife had an affair, I began, watching Chen's eyes light up with interest. I've forgiven her, of course. 23 years of marriage means something. But I recently discovered her affair was with a member of organized crime. Who? Chen leaned forward. A man named Marco Benedetti. I believe he's associated with the Carlosi family. Chen's poker face slipped for just a moment. The FBI had been trying to get hooks into the Carlosi organization for years. She may have inadvertently shared information about my practice, about my clients. Nothing deliberate. Elena isn't involved in my work, but pillow talk, you understand. I'm concerned about attorney-client privilege, about her safety if the Carloses think she might cooperate with authorities. We'd need to interview her extensively. Of course, but given the danger, we'd need protections, witness security protocols, limited movement for her safety. If she's willing to cooperate fully, she is. I slid over a prepared statement, supposedly from Elena. She's eager to help however she can. She feels terrible about the situation. And just like that, Elena became a federal witness. Not charged with anything. I'd been too careful for that, but material to an ongoing investigation. The restrictions were beautiful in their bureaucracy. Couldn't leave the state without permission, couldn't contact anyone involved in organized crime, which included her entire social circle, had to report weekly to federal handlers. She was trapped between two worlds, the mob thinking she might be cooperating with the feds thinking she might have information about the mob. Neither side trusted her, both sides watched her. "You've made me radioactive," she said during my next visit. "No one will ever trust me again." Trust? I unpacked the groceries I'd brought, organic vegetables, her favorite imported pasta, the little luxuries that made captivity bearable. "You want to discuss trust?" "This isn't justice, Vincent. This is revenge. This is consequence management. You created a problem. I'm containing it." I folded the grocery bags neatly, a mundane task in an insane situation. "How are you finding the house?" "It's a prison. It's a home. More than many wives in your position would have." I pulled out photos from my jacket. Vincent Jr.'s senior class photos came out nicely. I ordered the package with all the poses. She grabbed the photos eagerly, drinking in her son's face. "He looks handsome. Happy." "He is. Made varsity lacrosse captain for spring season. Columbia's coach is already interested." "I should be there for that." "You should have thought of that before." I took the photos back. "Maria's in the spring musical, playing Rizzo in Greece. She wanted me to ask if you'd be able to come." The hope in Elena's eyes was painful. "Can I? To a public high school, surrounded by parents who know you in a theater with multiple exits?" I shook my head. "The security risk is too high, but I'll video it for you." "This is cruel. This is reality. Your choices have consequences that ripple outward. Maria will perform without her mother in the audience because her mother chose 3 months of excitement over a lifetime of moments. I hate you. No, you don't. You hate what I've become. But you should recognize it. You created it." 3 months into Elena's confinement, patterns had established. I visited weekly, bringing groceries and updates about the children. The guards had stopped seeing her as a person and more as an assignment. The FBI checked in monthly, always hoping she'd remembered some crucial detail about the Carloses. She'd taken up painting to fill the endless hours. Landscapes mostly, always featuring wide open spaces and distant horizons. The metaphor was heavy-handed, but I said nothing. It was during one of these visits that I introduced her to Sophia. "This is my new assistant," I said casually, gesturing to the young woman who'd accompanied me. "Sophia's been invaluable in managing the foundation while you've been recovering." Sophia was everything Elena had been 25 years ago. Brilliant, beautiful, connected, ambitious. Harvard Law, family ties to Philadelphia, hungry to prove herself in our world. "Mrs. Torino," Sophia said respectfully, "it's an honor to meet you. Your work with the Children's Hospital has been inspirational." Elena's knuckles were white as she gripped her teacup. "How nice. And you're helping with the foundation." "Modernizing the approach," I said. "Sophia has some innovative ideas about expanding our reach. She'll be presenting to the board next month." The board Elena had chaired for a decade, the foundation she'd built from nothing, now handed to a younger woman who called her Mrs. Torino like she was already a relic. After Sophia excused herself to take a call, Elena turned on me. "She's half your age." "She's 28, exactly the age you were when we met." I smiled at the memory. "Though you were much more suspicious of me then. Took 3 months just to get a coffee date." "That's because I knew what you were. what you were capable of. And yet you married me anyway, loved me anyway. I stood to leave. Or at least I thought you did. I did love you. I do love you. You love the idea of me. The life I provided, the status, the security. But me? The man who works 18-hour days to keep this family out of federal prison? The man who missed dinners and birthdays because someone had to handle the ugly realities of our world? I shook my head. You got bored with that man. So you found someone more exciting. It wasn't like that. No? Then tell me what it was like. Explain to me how you justified it. I'm genuinely curious about the mental gymnastics required. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her painted landscapes. He made me feel young again, desired, like I was more than just someone's wife, someone's daughter, someone's mother. And now you're no one's anything. Was the trade worth it? She didn't answer because we both knew it wasn't. Year 2 brought new challenges. Vincent Jr. started at Columbia, following my path into law. Maria threw herself into her studies, earning early admission to a Swiss boarding school. The children visited their mother twice a year. Awkward affairs where they made small talk under the watchful eyes of guards. They're growing up without me, Elena said after one particularly stilted visit. They're growing up despite you, I corrected. Children are resilient. They adapt to disappointment. Is that what I am now? A disappointment? You're a cautionary tale. One we don't tell, but one that shapes how they see the world. I'd started bringing Sophia to more family functions, introducing her as my assistant, but letting the implications hang in the air. She was brilliant at it, professional enough to avoid scandal, but warm enough to make her eventual role clear. You're grooming her, Elena accused during one visit. To replace me. Replace you? You can't replace 23 years of marriage, but I can build something new on the ashes of what you burned down. While I rot in this prison. While you live in comfort and safety despite betraying everything we built. Some would call that mercy. Some would call it torture. Perspective is everything. The third year brought a crisis. A young federal prosecutor, ambitious and clever, had started pushing harder on the Carlosi investigation. She'd noticed Elena's name in witness files, started demanding real cooperation. Your wife could break this case open, Agent Chen told me during an update meeting. If she'd just give us something concrete about Benedetti, about their operations. My wife was a bored housewife who thought she was having an affair with a real estate developer, I said firmly. She has nothing concrete to offer. But the prosecutor wouldn't let it go. Subpoenas were threatened. Elena would have to appear, would have to choose between perjury and admitting she had nothing to offer. Either path led to disaster. So I offered her a deal. Sign these, I said, placing divorce papers on the table during my next visit. Elena stared at the documents like they were venomous. The terms were harsh. Complete divestiture of assets, no alimony, no claim on future earnings. She would walk away with nothing except her life. And if I sign? 50,000 cash, a car, new identity if you want it. You disappear, start over somewhere far from New York. Free and clear. 50,000? She laughed bitterly. I spend that on handbags. You spent that on handbags. Past tense. Now it's a fortune or nothing. And if I refuse? Then you stay here. The FBI keeps pushing, eventually realizes you have nothing to offer. But they keep you on their books anyway, a potential witness who might remember something someday. You grow old in this house, watching life pass by through windows. She pushed the papers back. No. No? I won't give you the satisfaction. You want me gone? You'll have to keep me prisoner forever. But I won't willingly walk away from my children, my life, my name. Your name. You want to keep the name you dishonored? It's still mine. I'm still Mrs. Vincent Torino, whether you like it or not. I gathered the papers. Then enjoy your cage, Mrs. Torino. However long it lasts. You'll never be happy with her, Elena said as I headed for the door. You're Sophia. She's too young, too eager. She doesn't know who you really are. Neither did you, apparently. Or you would have known better than to betray me. That was 2 years ago. Elena still sits in her beautiful prison, painting landscapes she'll never see, reading books about lives she'll never live. I visit monthly now, brief encounters that follow a script. Children's updates, household maintenance, nothing personal. Sophia and I married last spring in a small ceremony. Elena's father walked her down the aisle, the ultimate gesture of where loyalties lay. We have twin boys now, the family I should have had the first time with a woman who understands that in our world, loyalty isn't just expected, it's everything. Any word from Marco? I asked during my last visit, breaking our usual script. Elena looked up from her book, surprised by the personal question. You know there isn't? He's dead, I said casually. Has been for 5 years. Caught up with him in Montreal 2 days after he ran. Made it look like a mugging gone wrong. The color drained from her face as the last hope died. You said... I said he could run. I never said how far. I straightened my tie, the same gesture from that hotel room. You've been waiting for a ghost, Elena, hoping maybe someday he'd come back, whisk you away from all this. But he's been rotting in the ground while you've been rotting in this house. You're a monster. I'm a man who loved his wife completely and was repaid with betrayal. Everything that followed came from that original sin. I hope she cheats on you. You're perfect, Sophia. I hope she finds someone who makes her feel the way Marco made me feel. The difference is, Sophia understands the rules. She knows the price of betrayal in our world. You knew too. You just thought you were above consequences. Everyone thinks that, Elena said quietly. Until they aren't. I left her with her books and her paintings, drove back to the city where my new life waited. The twins would want their bedtime story. Sophia would have dinner ready. A perfect life built on the ashes of another. Sometimes I dream about Elena as she was, vibrant, commanding, the woman who could make federal prosecutors stammer with a smile. But that woman died in a hotel room with her lover, and what remains is this faded echo I visit out of some twisted sense of duty. She wanted excitement? She got it. 3 months of passion that cost her everything. Now she has all the time in the world to remember those stolen afternoons, to paint her landscapes, to wonder if it was worth it. In our world, betrayal has a price. Elena's still paying hers, one empty day at a time. And somewhere in Montreal, Marco Benedetti lies in an unmarked grave, the price of his ambition collected in full. Justice? Revenge? In our world, they're often the same thing. The only difference is in the telling. I pull into my driveway, modern glass and steel, nothing like the traditional estate Elena chose. The lights are warm inside, the sound of children's laughter drifting through windows. This is my revenge, my justice, my new beginning. Behind me on Long Island, Elena Torino sits in her beautiful cage. She has her books, her paints, her memories. She has everything except what matters: freedom, family, future. She chose 3 months of feeling alive. I gave her a lifetime to remember how it felt. In our world, that's what passes for mercy.